We'll do it live. Fuck it. Do it live. I'll write it and we'll do it live. And thing sucks.
In 5, 4, 3.
Citizens of the internet, welcome to another nail-biting episode of the Politics series, number 70, right here. It's definitely been an interesting couple weeks in politics, and this week's theme, of course, being bombs and guns, two things that America loves and are closely intertwined within our economy and our general dialogue and just psyche as a whole.
Oh, I am so glad you are here.
Because we have a lot to talk about today.
Well,
all right. So if you've been paying attention to the news, there's a lot of news about war. And in fact, I was just thinking the other day, wow, it's been a long time since we've had a mass shooting. Lo and behold, the Lord giveth. That was complete and total sarcasm, by the way. I'm not happy about a mass.
Yo, we here now. Stupid.
So, this is the headline from CNN right here. Mother of mass shooting suspect called Appalachia High School with warning after getting alarming text, grandfather says. It does seem like there's an alarming pattern with how they have warnings about these guys and tend to do nothing about it. So let's read what this CNN article here has to say about this shooting. So the mother of the teenager suspected of killing 4 people during a Georgia school shooting called to warn a school counselor prior to the shooting, the suspect's aunt and grandmother said Saturday. Maybe this is like a CYA thing. Colt Gray, 14, apologized to his mother, Marcy Gray, on the morning of the mass shooting at Appalachia High School, sending an alarming early morning text that prompted the mother to warn the school, his grandfather told the New York Post. Marcy Gray's father, Charles Polamus, told the New York Post that his daughter was at his home in Georgia on Wednesday morning when Colt texted her to say, "I'm sorry, Mom." Colt has been charged with 4 counts of murder after committing a mass shooting earlier this week at Appalachia High School in Winder, Georgia. Prosecutors said he will be tried as an adult. Marcy Gray broke her silence Saturday, apologizing for the absolutely horrific shooting. I can only imagine what it would be like to be the parent of a shooter like this. I mean, you might want to commit suicide yourself if this happened and your kid did it, you know? And I'm not saying we should afford them a ton of sympathy because at the end of the day, the kid's 14 years old. It is your fault, the fact that he, A, had the wherewithal to do something like this, and B, had access to guns like he did. I mean, any parent with a 14-year-old who has access to guns in this environment is definitely, sharing a little bit of the blame when it comes down to it. So let's keep going here, though. I am so sorry and cannot fathom the pain and suffering they are going through right now, she told Washington Post in a text. I mean, to be fair, again, she's probably going through similar pain because she just lost her son. It's not the same, though. The mother called the school about an unsuspected extreme emergency involving Colt sometime before the shooting began. Gray's sister, Annie Brown, told the Washington Post and later confirmed to CNN. A 10-minute call was placed from Marcy Gray's phone to the school at 9:50 a.m., the Washington Post reported. Police were notified of the shooting around 10:20 that morning, CNN previously reported. Marcy Gray later confirmed the call to the Washington Post, which reported Gray declined to elaborate on what had prompted her to call in the warning to the school, but said she had shared that information with law enforcement. And of course, the outrage was swift and palpable. And I loved what this guy right here had to say, because I have made this connection several times on my own. A lot of people don't. But the connection between the violence here in America and the violence that we export all over the world on a constant and never-ending basis, these school shootings in some form or another are blowback, really, for the type of stuff that we export around the world. Now, how that kind of evolves, we can debate the semantics of that, but I would argue that the violence here at home starts with our foreign policy. So this guy says, I've got to say the liberal outrage with regard to school shootings falls a little flat when they're sending bombs to Israel, which has destroyed literally every single school in Gaza, slaughtering thousands and thousands of children. And that is a very salient point that no one in the I don't like to call it mainstream anymore, the legacy media, the legacy corporate media will make as they feign outrage over this and continue to do nothing about it. So just kind of keeping on this theme here of our disgusting and belligerent foreign policy and how that kind of trickles down to the homeland. A lot of people know this, but a lot of people know that it is brat summer. And I made this morning. I'm pretty proud of myself here, because both Dick and Liz Cheney endorse Kamala Harris. And we're going to go deeper into the weeds on brat summer a little bit later. But I kind of formulated my own little acronym here because, if you know me, brunch liberals are something that I regularly, that's a slur I like to use. Brunch libs, brunch liberals, people that are out to brunch while, regular people are trying to change things in the country. This was a term that evolved during the Bernie Sanders movement. The people that when Hillary lost, I think the genesis of the term was some woman said, if Hillary was president, I'd be at brunch right now, as they're protesting Trump in the streets. So both Dick and Liz Cheney came out in support of Kamala Harris recently. I don't know if you saw this or not, but we're going to share a tweet from one of my favorite accounts, Rat, Republicans Against Trump, right here. Take a look at this. And new statement from former Vice President Cheney. In our nation's 248-year history, there has never been an individual who is a greater threat to our republic than Donald Trump. He tried to steal the last election using lies and violence to keep himself in power after the voters had rejected him. He could never be trusted with power again. That's real rich coming from the guy, the hanging chads guy. As citizens, we each have a duty to put country above partisanship and defend our Constitution. That's why I'll be casting my vote for Vice President Kamala Harris. And here's more video of his daughter, just so we got it
for many
of Liz Cheney. Let's listen to this.
Dick Cheney, your father, a beloved figure among Democrats for many years. Do you, if you know who he will be supporting or who he'll be voting for, do you care to share with us who he might be voting for?
Dick Cheney will be voting for Kamala Harris.
Okay.
Listen to that cheer. Listen to that applause.
Wow.
And that is so brat. Because it's brat summer, kids. And the real true brats are voting for Kamala Harris. And there's no one more brat than Dick and Liz Cheney. Wouldn't you agree that the forefront of the brat marketing campaign should be led by Dick and Liz Cheney. Most brat people on the planet, in my personal opinion. And so this kind of got me, this whole thing. Dick Cheney comes out in support of Kamala Harris. Of course he does, because she is the status quo. And as much as people dislike Trump, I know that I say this like a broken record. Whitney Webb is right about a lot of the stuff she says about Trump, but you have to ask yourself, if Trump was such a, by the book Republican fascist, right-wing fascist, why do these people, these people, my mirror camera, whatever. Why do these people over here hate Trump so much? If he's such a, typical Republican and right-wing fascist, why are these people endorsing the Democrats? Very few want to ask that question. And I have the answer for you. I hope you're ready for it. I've covered this before too. And a real news outlet, who covered this would touch on this, but we're going to go down memory lane just a little bit right here. To the time when we had this article about how Halliburton, Dick Cheney's company, equipment worth $7.1 million was imported into Russia in the last year. Customs records show. Exclusive. U.S. oil multinationals face questions over trade with Russia amid pressure to cease operations. This is from September 17th, 1 year ago. U.S. oil and gas multinationals. Let me switch this slide for you. U.S. oil and gas multinationals are facing fresh questions over their trade with Russia after customs records revealed that more than $7.1 million worth of equipment manufactured by Halliburton has been imported into the country since it announced the end of its Russian operations. So Halliburton was still selling weapons to Russia after the Ukraine war started. Last September, Halliburton, one of the world's largest providers of products and services for oil and gas exploration, sold its Russian office to local management amid pressure on all U.S. companies to cease their trade after the U.S. invasion of Ukraine. Russia customs records seen by The Guardian show that despite this move to sell up on 8th of September, Halliburton subsidiaries exported equipment of a value of $5.7 million to its former operation in Russia in the 6 weeks that followed the sale. Interesting, isn't it? The equipment was largely shipped from the U.S. and Singapore, although the record showed originated in a range of countries, including the UK, Belgium, and France. All heroes. The bulk of exports from the subsidiaries ended on the 6th of October, but the last shipment to Russia from a Halliburton company recorded as Halliburton MFG in the records was of a sealing element priced at $2,939 on the 24th of October, 2022, from Malaysia to a firm called Sakhalin Energy, a consortium that is developing the Sakhalin 2 oil and gas project in eastern Russia. Its investors include Gazprom. Shell divested from the consortium after the invasion of Ukraine. One last slide here. After a short pause, imports of Halliburton equipment to Russia resumed in December 2022 from two companies unrelated to the U.S. multinational. The products were imported from Turkey, bringing the total value of exports of Halliburton equipment to Russia since the company closed its operations to at least $7.163 million. All of the exports to Russia made since September, 98%, were supplied to Halliburton's newly independent former operation known as Burr Service, whose clients have included Gazprom, Rosneft, TNK, BP, and Lukoil. Now, I can guarantee you that they're still selling stuff to Russia through other, dark sources in some respect. But this is one of the reasons that Dick Cheney supports Kamala Harris, because a Kamala Harris presidency will ensure that this boon for his profits continues. And no one's thinking about this anymore. And again, this isn't to say that Trump is going to come in and not take advantage of the government in his own way or his own corrupt way. I'm sure he is, but also this is stuff that's good to know. This is stuff that real journalists would be talking about. So anyway, just to keep going down this wormhole a little bit with you, this is an article from this year. Look at this. Halliburton beats profit estimates, expects international strength to continue. April 23rd of 2024. So I didn't clip a bunch of stuff from this article, but this goes into how while their domestic profits are flat, they saw a giant lift in profits under internationally because of their Ukraine operations, because they do this, because they're making money off of this war. Dick Cheney is still a war profiteer, just like he was back in the 2000s. The difference is now he's got a whole new set of puppets doing it for you, doing it for him, running the show for him. And all he has to do is talk about what a terrible person Trump is. And, liberals rejoice in over that. So here is just another kind of quick example of these people showing you exactly who they are and what they're doing. And this is from April 24th of 2023. So this is from last year. But U.S. energy companies could help Ukraine win energy freedom and neuter Russia. As if we didn't know that was the goal all along. But let's read some of this. When chief executive of Ukraine's Naftogaz was in Washington last week, he spoke with ExxonMobil and Halliburton about investing in his country. Indeed, Ukraine could become a natural gas powerhouse, a pivotal pathway to winning membership in the European Union and defanging Russia. They're kind of saying out loud that the whole point of this war, grinding down the Ukrainians, was to, defang Russia or to take out Russia. But if that really was the actual case, it's not working. If you actually read, and we're going to get into that in just a minute, but let's keep reading this real quick, this little nugget. Russia has long had a firm grip on Ukraine politically and economically, specifically concerning natural gas. Well before the war, Ukrainians sought to break this broad stranglehold, resulting in the 2014 overthrow of a Russian-backed president. And now Ukraine is vowing energy independence, but its future power lies in becoming a net exporter of natural gas to Europe. And so, of course, these U.S. companies have to get in on that. And it's interesting the way they frame this, too, as if the Ukraine was like Russia's secret puppet. Really, they were selling a lot of their natural gas to Russia, and that's one of the reasons the U.S. wanted to kind of commandeer that country, to put it nicely. For years, Russia has manipulated energy in Ukraine to keep us dependent. This year, we are targeting our self-sufficiency to produce as much gas as we consume. We plan to increase our gas production by 1 billion cubic meters, allowing us to avoid imports. It is absolutely possible, says Oleksiy Chernyshev in an interview. Naftogaz is Ukraine's largest state-owned energy company, developing oil, natural gas, and some renewables. Now, we know how the USA treats companies with state-owned natural resources. We see what they're doing in Venezuela right now, attempting to do. They just they just stole Homeboy's plane in the Dominican Republic because he won't bow to the will of their electioneering efforts, which was almost going to be electioneering. Almost was going to be the title of this podcast. There's a Radiohead song called Electioneering, and it's a word that's been on my mind a lot lately. Electioneering, engineering elections, as has happened in the last couple cycles here in the United States. The engineering of elections, but let's keep going here. So anyway, just to kind of wrap this up, it produces, refines, distributes, stores, and sells natural gas. It kept 12.5 million Ukrainians warm this winter while Russia waged its war, knocking out electrical grids and central stations. So that kind of, I think, makes it pretty clear, as if, if it wasn't clear before, why we're in Ukraine and why Dick Cheney supports the Harris presidency, because he knows that things will continue as they are now with no one at the helm. Like Biden's on vacation somewhere. Who's running the country? I think we know. That guy's name, Lloyd Austin from Raytheon. So fast forward to where we are today in this conflict. This is an article I pulled from CNN this morning. Outgunned and outnumbered, Ukraine's military is struggling with low morale and desertion. So let's read some of this real quick. And this is from, of course, today, September 8th, Sunday, September 8th, 2024. Dima never puts out a cigarette until he smokes it right down to the filter, risking burning his fingers to squeeze out one more drag. He spent years on the Ukrainian front lines. He knows the price of a good smoke. Already, the propaganda is thick here. As a battalion commander, Dima was in charge of around 800 men who fought in some of the fiercest, bloodiest battles of the war, most recently near Pokrovsk, the strategic eastern town that is now on the brink of falling to Russia. Wah, wah. But with most of his troops now dead or severely injured, Dima decided he'd had enough. He quit and took another job with the military in an office in Kiev. Standing outside that office, chain smoking and drinking sweet coffee, he told CNN he just couldn't handle watching his men die anymore. Interesting. Anymore. You know, there was a certain limit he got to where he was, 2.5 years of Russia's grinding offensive have now decimated many Ukrainian units. Reinforcements are few and far between, leaving some soldiers exhausted and demoralized. The situation is particularly dire among infantry units near Pokrovsk and elsewhere on the eastern front line, where Ukraine is struggling to stop Russia's creeping advances. CNN spoke to 6 commanders and officers who are or were until recently fighting or supervising units in the area. All 6 said desertion and insubordination are becoming a widespread problem, especially among newly recruited soldiers. 4 of the 6, including Dima, have asked for their names to be changed or withheld due to the sensitive nature of the topic and because they are not authorized to speak to the media. Interesting stuff, isn't it? So we got one more little piece of this for you. Not all mobilized soldiers are leaving their positions, but the majority are. When new guys come here, they see how difficult it is. They see a lot of enemy drones, artillery, and mortars. One unit commander currently fighting in Pokrovsk told CNN. He also asked to remain anonymous. They go to the positions once, and if they survive, they never return. They either leave their positions, refuse to go into battle, or try to find a way to leave the army, he added. Unlike those who volunteered earlier in the war, many of the new recruits didn't have a choice in entering the conflict. They were called up after Ukraine's new mobilization law came into force in the spring and can't leave legally until after the government introduces demobilization unless they get special permission to do so. So right there, they are literally making laws to force people to fight in a war so Dick Cheney can make money. That's why we're continuing this war. There have been several peaceful off-ramps. I'm still live on YouTube, but there have been several peaceful off-ramps, and the reason that they want this to keep going is because companies like Halliburton are going to make a shit ton of money. Now, once it's over, they're still going to make a shit ton of money. So obviously right now, the missiles and all the weapons and all that kind of stuff is a boon as well. So just to kind of hammer this point home here, I want you to see this video that was posted by Che Bose. And this is kind of just illustrating the point that the CNN article made about the recruits here. So check this out. This is very interesting stuff. I think you'll find it very interesting, as I did. So this is Che Bose. In Odessa, Ukraine, the death of 1,000 cuts continues. Zelensky's kidnappers need to replenish the hundreds of thousands of dead Ukrainian troops sacrificed for NATO. Meanwhile, the dictator is hailed as a hero in Brussels, London, and Washington. Yeah, there's puffing his chode on the news here. So watch this. This is a soldier. They're trying to take this guy. Get the fuck off of me.
Що? 700 гривень на. Зараз. 700 гривень за майку. Зараз міліцію. Ти третій сюди. Поляка ти? В армії не був. В армії не...
So, on that note, it's kind of interesting to watch Dick Cheney and Liz Cheney endorse Kamala Harris. And there's a lot of talk around the Kamala Harris campaign about joy. So I want to show you just a couple quick commercials that I created for the Harris campaign. And feel free to use these guys if you want. I believe that they're copyright safe because the clips are under 6 seconds. But here's the first one.
Oh, joy of joy. Oh, joy.
There you go. Because if there's one thing that Dick Cheney and Liz Cheney know about, it's joy. And that is kind of the theme outside of, being brats or whatever this year. So I'm going to show you one more of these. And I'm going to probably use these pretty regular on, but this is ad number 2 for the Harris campaign.
Joy, 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 joy.
So there you have it. Kamala Harris viral ads promoting her platform of joy, now adopted by Dick Cheney. And just on that note too, I wanted to show you real quick. This is this morning. As of this morning, there was this kind of photo op thing that happened with Harris, and a lot of people are saying it was staged. I don't know what to believe, but I'll show it to you, and you can judge for yourself. How about that? Catch me outside. How about that? This is from your boy Cat Turd, one of the most intelligent and high class accounts, I would say, on the Twitter platform. Every American should get to see this clip of Vice President Harris. Retweet so more can. So I'm doing my part in sharing this clip with you. Let's watch it. Here we go.
Understand? Make sure you know.
Oh, it's gonna be good. We're gonna be good. We're gonna be fine. We're gonna be fine. We are all in this together.
Yes, we are.
We're gonna be fine.
We are.
Yes, we are. Yes, we are.
Huh?
Yes. Did you get some spices? Oh, it's all good. It's all good. We're standing strong, right? We love our country. Right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Who's this? Is this a relative of yours or just a new friend?
It's a new friend.
Hi.
I'm a lawyer in Pittsburgh here, and I just admire your work so much.
Good. What kind of law you practice?
Consumer protection.
Good for you.
I'm protecting consumers.
Good for you. That's the work I did at AG.
Yes,
That's good stuff.
Yes.
That's really good. Of course. Come on. Let's do it. Come on.
Oh my God, I'm shaking. Someone take it. I think I get it. Can someone take it for me, please?
Who are the yellow jackets? Come here.
They're my school.
They're your school? What school is that?
Freeport.
Freeport? What's your name?
Charlotte.
Nice to meet you, Charlotte. I'm Kamala. Are you cooking also? What are you doing here? Or did you bring an adult with you? You're just hanging out. How are you?
Can I have a hug?
Yes, come here. Of course. Aw. How's school going? Has it started? Yeah? It's going well?
Yeah.
What's your teacher's name?
My homeroom teacher is Mr. Gaylot.
Mr. Gala? Okay, will you deliver a message to the
So already, this does look a little scripted and staged, but at the same time, and I've said this before, this is one of those things that, at the very least, the president maybe will make people feel good. That's my argument for Kamala Harris. Like, she makes people feel good.
Joy, 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 joy.
So let's keep watching this.
Your teacher, and you're gonna have to say the vice president asked me to deliver this message. Okay, here's the message. Thank you for being a teacher. Will you do that for me? Okay, high five. There we go. Oh, you're good. You're a leader already. Come on. Yes, right here. This way. Got it. Thank you so much. Thank you guys. Thank you. You keep doing your work. You're doing good. That's good work.
Charlotte, right here. Can I get a picture?
Yes, come on.
Here's the picture.
Got it. Parents in there. Come on, parents.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Okay. Now it's getting a little ridiculous.
He's a teacher.
Yes.
You are a
Yes,
teacher?
yes, yes.
What level?
7th grade geography.
Oh,
social
bless
studies,
you.
yes.
Good. Thank you.
Thank you.
And you know, Tim Walsh.
Yes. Oh yeah, that's great.
Yes.
Yeah.
Come on, let's
At first, I was kind of like, okay, you know, maybe it's unfair of them to say this was staged. But by the time they got to that last couple, that just seems a little bit suspect.
Oh, joy of joy! Oh, joy!
So let's go to the comments for just a second. Who's this guy? We got David Kuhn. If you think there are non-brunch liberals, you may be a brunch liberal. I mean, I don't know what that means exactly. You might be a redneck. It's so the brat thing, just to go back to that for a second. The brat thing was a joke, really. I thought brunch was for rat. You know, Republicans against Trump to me has always been rat. But I was looking for a word to, you know, fit in there as a beat. I thought like best Republicans against Trump, beautiful Republicans against Trump, but like brunch liberals against Trump just fit the best. Because these are the kind of people that would hear brunch Republicans, the kind of people that would hear Liz and Dick Cheney endorse Kamala Harris and be like, yay, Dick Cheney and Liz Cheney endorsed Kamala. Those kind of people are brunch Republicans. Like they're the most dense kind of people. So, you know, maybe you could call them brunch liberals as well. But the whole idea was just to get a nice, memorable acronym for brat here. And I think I did a good job. So be mad if you want, but that's the whole rationale behind brunch Republicans, just so you know. Willie Bragg is in the chat. Willie, good to see you, man. We are going to do a joint stream soon. I'll DM you about it. We'll have to do something in the next couple weeks. Conspiriality is in the mix here. Very interesting. Ree Halliburton. Yeah, I covered this before. People are missing that. This whole, I mean, you know the deal, man. Like this whole military contractor thing just continues. It's just the same thing that was going on with Iraq. I actually talked to a kid the other day who's former military who was doing contracting work for the military, and he was kind of giving me the lowdown. And, you know, respect to him. He was a really cool dude. So, you know, I it's one of those things that it's not a black and white issue. Like military contracting isn't always bad. But in a case where, you know, you have someone like Dick Cheney, who is a notoriously corrupt warmonger, coming out and endorsing Kamala Harris, you know, it's good to dive into the motives of that a little bit and go, okay, why is Dick Cheney behind Kamala Harris? Well, because it's business is good for him with this if the status quo continues. And both Trump and Vance have been a little dicey on the Ukraine thing. I mean, you could argue at this point, Trump has kind of said, oh, we'll give him a loan or whatever. Like he's backpedaled a little bit on it as well. But of those two choices, it's pretty clear what Dick Cheney's actual motives are. Not that he thinks Donald Trump is a threat to democracy, that it's a threat to his pocketbook. As a former, yeah, man, I am with you 1,000%. I was one of those guys who watched Rachel Maddow and this guy all the
Donald
time.
Trump.
And I thought, that was the end all be all of reality. And now I listen to people who still watch that shit and I'm like, what the fuck is wrong with you? Holy Christ. So let's move on to the next little segment here. Speaking of Kamala Harris and Trump and the current election cycle, one of the things I have talked about pretty frequently is that I have seen a realignment of the parties happening. And if you've been paying attention, you've seen it. Look, RFK and Tulsi Gabbard are out there stumping for Donald Trump versus Kamala Harris. And Dick Cheney just came out and endorsed Kamala Harris. So I think that pretty much validates my whole take on the parties realigning, does it not? Dick Cheney endorsing Kamala Harris and RFK Jr. and Tulsi Gabbard. I mean, RFK Jr. tried to run in the Democratic primary and they're like, get the hell out of here, bro. We take a lot of money from the interests you're criticizing. So I think Brett Weinstein, who I'm not I'm not one of those like Brett Weinsteins or whatever you want to call it. I'm not a huge like Brett Weinstein guy or anything, but he just did a interview with Joe Rogan, and in that interview, I think he more eloquently than just about anyone I've seen yet breaks down this party realignment thing. And so let's just start with the kind of way he introduces it right here, and we'll go from there. Forgive my slow-handedness today.
What we know, and I think actually we owe Trump a huge debt of gratitude for proving something that I couldn't have told you if it was true before he won the presidency, which is there still enough democracy left in the system for something to upend the plan? Right? Because he was clearly off narrative.
Right.
And he did become president. So he did something for us that I don't know anybody else who could have done it.
Yeah, it would take a person with that kind of personality that could withstand that kind of abuse.
So I think that is spot on. I even remember what's the guy? The guy from Penn and Teller. I think it's Penn. But he was on Celebrity Apprentice, and I remember him saying, like, when Trump won, he's like, well, at least we know that like the system isn't rigged. Like anyone can be president, And I don't think that's necessarily true, but to Weinstein and Rogan's point here about the abuse, being able to take the abuse, and this gets pretty good. Bernie Sanders could not take the abuse. Also, Bernie Sanders doesn't have the resources and the balls of someone like Trump. So I think this is a very salient point they're making here.
He didn't freak out at all when they went after him. He's like,
right.
Just brushed it off like it was nothing. And no one's done that. He's also the only guy that's ever gone through 4 years and didn't age like he went through 30 years.
That's true.
He aged normal.
Yeah.
Like he's used to it. He's used to pressure, and Bush, he aged a ton. Obama aged a ton. Everybody aged a ton. Biden was already cooked before he got in, but he's hard. But he aged a ton. I mean, Biden
was
from
already
2019
before he got in.
to today is a different person.
Yeah, and he was already visibly degraded, but wow, was it a precipitous decline.
Big jump now.
Yeah.
Trump was fine.
Yeah, Trump physically, and actually, I think he sounds better. I think, he drives me crazy sometimes when he talks, but I think he's getting better at it.
I think he's trying to be a little bit more reasonable, and try to appeal to more people because of that, that effort to be more reasonable. Like he's changed his mind about a lot of things. He's talking about legalizing marijuana. He's talking about all these different things that are like where, you're going to get a lot of different responses from like the hardcore Republicans are not going to be for that. any idea of abortion. The hardcore right wing,
like Dick Cheney,
are not interested at all. And any
And I'm not
restrictions
talking
on
about Dick
abortion.
Cheney in regards to abortion. I don't think Dick Cheney really cares about abortion, but the other things.
All you get your hardcore left wing. So it's mostly the people in the middle. Abortion's a good one, right? Because most people are like, no one should be able to tell you what you could do with your body, but also aborting an 8-month-old fetus is kind of fucking insane.
Yeah, I mean, the funny thing, and I've been saying this forever, is that almost everybody agrees on the basics on abortion. We're supposed to not be able to even talk about it.
Right.
I think that's totally true. Most people don't support late-term abortion except for in the event where it's a rape or incest or the life of the mother is in danger. But I don't want to talk about abortion. I want to jump up to this next point that they touch on, which is the current election and the whole kind of switching of the parties and how liberals can't see the change that's happened because they really can't. It's the propaganda probably. But check this out. I think they go into that, right?
Boom.
Yeah.
And then what do we do?
No, it's insane. And the hardest part, I'm sure you have these people in your life too, but let's just take my parents for a second.
Okay.
My parents are good people, lifelong Democrats. They live in LA, surrounded by Hollywood types.
I think we're all surrounded by people like this that are good people that are just propagandized as fuck.
Cannot seem to grasp the fact that the party that they believed in is now doing the inverse of everything they signed up for.
Exactly.
Because the New York Times rephrases everything so it seems like the values are still there.
Right. Which is wild.
I think, too, a lot of people don't think about how the January 6th op is really what gave the Cheneys the license to be like, oh, we're liberal now because those guys tried to overthrow the government. They almost did. They almost did. They almost took over the most powerful country in the world. They almost did it, didn't they? How stupid do you have to be to believe that shit? It's just ridiculous.
It's crazy. And if you're not a New York Times reader, you can barely figure out what these people are talking about.
Did you see the article that I posted on my Instagram? That's a title of a New York Times article for today.
Which one?
Jamie, pull this up. I want Brett to see this so you know this is real. This isn't the Babylon Bee. This is an actual New York Times article. You see it?
Yeah, I had it in a weird spot. Let me grab from your Instagram.
This is so crazy. It's really hard to believe that someone would print this and the New York Times would say, yeah, we like it. Put it out there.
I'm not quite sure what to expect.
Look at this.
Oh, yeah, of course.
The Constitution is sacred. Is it also dangerous?
Right.
One of the biggest threats to American politics might be the country's founding document. What the fuck are you talking about?
Yeah.
One of the biggest threats to America's politics might be one of the greatest documents that any country was ever founded on.
I love how they phrase that too. America's politics. The people have repeatedly tried to remove the status quo and been stopped from doing that. And so now they're like, oh, maybe we just need to like make sure the people don't have a say at all in this because they're not voting the way we want them to.
If not the greatest ever, that could be a threat to America's politics. What politics are we talking about? Like how could you possibly gaslight me enough to go along with you on this?
Yeah.
How could you, Joe?
It's incredible. I mean, it's on the one hand, completely predictable, right?
Right.
Because there's authority force there that just grinds its teeth at night over the Constitution and the fact that it prevents it from doing things that it just wants to do last week, you know? And so, of course, they're like scratching their heads like, can we come up with an argument for why it might be time to get rid of that thing? And of course, if you're a normal thinking person, this is complete insanity. But if you're a New York Times reader, I'm sure that fits with
this
the
makes
kind
sense
of ethos
to New York
that's been
Times readers.
cultivated.
This is why a person like Trump is
a threat to democracy at this point, voters. A threat to democracy at 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 voters. A threat to democracy. 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 White rural voters. White rural voters. Voters. A threat to democracy. White rural voters. White rural voters. White rural voters. The threat to American democracy.
So white rural voters and the Constitution are now a threat to democracy. How stupid do you have to be to believe that? Stupid enough to believe that?
Oh, joy of joy! Oh, joy!
Let's keep going here, though.
Difficult to justify all this shit. So if you have Kamala Harris and she's competing against Ron DeSantis, if it's just Kamala Harris and Ron DeSantis and Trump doesn't exist, maybe he died. Maybe he died in the last few years, you know. What? How could you wouldn't be able to make that argument? You wouldn't. There's no imminent threat,
right?
Let's say Mitt Romney. Let's say someone even more moderate as a Republican, even more palatable. You can't make that. You can't make that argument that we can't have a First Amendment because the First Amendment is getting in the way. The First Amendment is allowing people to say things that aren't true, misinformation and disinformation, and we're right here. We're September 2nd. I think yesterday was the first day where Brazil banned Twitter.
I know.
So X is illegal to have in Brazil as of today, as of yesterday. And not only is it illegal, but you go through it through a VPN and they will charge you $8,000 a day.
I know. It's incredible that we are watching this.
Insane.
But I would remind you, they did pull this stuff when it was Mitt Romney, when it was George W. Bush, right? The rhetoric was still existential threat, right? And they always have particular versions of this, right?
Not as ramped up as this.
Right.
Is, this is like Hitler talk.
No,
this isn't. They never talked about Mitt Romney like he was Hitler.
I agree. And as I've been saying since the
They
beginning,
did kind of talk about Obama that way, though, which is interesting. I mean, remember those? I've showed it before. The socialism, the Joker thing. They did talk about Obama that way. So, but the point being here is that the parties have realigned, and I don't think that's more evident than ever. I think it's more evident now than it's ever been that the parties have realigned. Like I said, Dick Cheney is supporting the Democrat, and RFK Jr. and Tulsi Gabbard are supporting the Republican. I mean, that right there is hard evidence that what I've been saying, what Jimmy Dore, what Do Dissidents, what all these people that pay attention to what's actually going on have been saying, have been 100% correct about this switch. So Brihana Joy Gray was recently on George Galloway's show. And I know that she's not as popular in my circles as she used to be, but she's still someone who I think has some credibility with the brunch liberal cadre. And so for that reason, I think it's good when people like her speak truth. And she did a little bit of that in this interview. So we're going to talk about it. To start, we're going to get her take on Brat Summer right here. And let's get it going. Here we go.
Enthusiasm over Kamala Harris taking over from Joe Biden. The enthusiasm that was generated around the DNC has started to wane. They were branding the enthusiasm spike as a sort of Brat Summer reference to a popular album over the summer, but that doesn't seem like there's much of a plan for what's going to happen in the fall. And I do think that the panic is well-founded when you look at certain polling data, which shows, for instance, that Kamala Harris remains behind in all of the swing states. And additionally, that she's tied with Jill Stein, 26% to 26% among Muslim voters, who might be the determinants of the election outcome in states like Michigan, which are must win for Kamala Harris. So yes, I do think that you can read into some of the news focus right now, a kind of vulnerability and insecurity from the Democratic Party, which makes me less bullish on Kamala Harris than I might have been if you had asked me what I think is probably going to happen just a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, I mean,
So Brat Summer is over for the time being. And maybe it was Dick Cheney and his daughter here who ended Brat Summer. But Brat Summer, according to Bree, is over. Sorry, Brat Summer. Brunch Republicans against Trump have taken over your summer. And in this next bit, I want to focus on where basically at this point, Galloway says the election is pretty much Trump's to lose or win at this point, which I would kind of agree with. We'll see if he smartens up, but
those reasons. The way I see it right now, it's Trump's prize to win. He can only lose it now. The Democrats will not be able to win it.
Well, I agree with parts of that and not others. I do think there are a lot of Green Party voters who are Green Party voters or independent voters first and foremost, who might have voted for Bernie and been brought into the Democratic Party because of Bernie Sanders, but are not typically Democratic voters. Bernie performed better than any other candidate in that very crowded 2020 race with independents, and has that particular appeal. And I don't think it's a one-to-one of Jill Stein voters who would otherwise have voted for the Democrat, Kamala Harris, especially in the context of the war in Gaza, which is such a key issue for so many people in this race in particular. I would point out that in 2016, there were more people in Michigan who voted and left the top of the ballot blank. In other words, went to the polls, stood in line, voted for all the down ballot candidates, but refused to vote for Hillary Clinton, then were needed for Hillary to win in that state. So in other words, there were people who wanted to vote and who even wanted to vote for Democrats down ballot, but uniquely didn't want to vote for that candidate. So the idea that the Green Party vote is dispositive in these elections isn't entirely true. There was a similar statistic back in 2000 with Ralph Nader, where more registered Democrats in Florida voted for George Bush than voted for the Green Party. So there's a lot of interesting stuff happening there electorally. I do agree that most RFK Jr. voters were likely to vote for the Republican and the alternative anyway, but I also share your concern that RFK Jr. could have done something really interesting. He could have used the dissatisfaction with the two major candidates at the time, Donald Trump and Joe Biden, to build a third party, to build something institutionally that.
Okay, that's kind of what he did. Like, this is the thing about RFK that bugs me. There's definitely some liberal derangement over RFK because he did all that. He actually did try to run as a third party, as an independent, and they sued him off the ballot like they're doing to Jill Stein now, Bree. So I don't know. This is the thing I think that bothers me a little bit about Bree and just some of the online pundits and RFK. Yeah, he's shitty on Israel. They all are. So, you know, when I criticize RFK, I will criticize that he's one of the worst actually on Israel, but they're all bad. You know, it's just the Democrats market themselves better with it. They pretend that they're better at it. They do these like kind of like virtue signaling moves, like Biden banned one shipment of weapons to Israel like in the middle of the night that they didn't care about anyway or whatever. And then they run that as if they're like some kind of an actual opposition. At least RFK and Trump are kind of open about their vehement support for Israel. And again, Trump was president. I saw how he was with Israel. I'm not one of those people who's under the impression that he's going to be different on Israel than any of them, because he's very clearly bought by those interests. But by the same token, he has expressed, you know, talked back to Netanyahu. Trump is actually, you know, arrogant enough and self-centered enough that he can't be bullied around as much by these lobbies as other politicians can. So there is that side of it. And say what you want, but I think that's the case here. So jumping over to another part of this where they talk a little bit more about RFK. Well, let's just listen to Bree finish up her take on RFK.
That lasted longer than his individual run, that really presented a challenge to the duopoly. And he chose not to do that. He chose to run as an independent outside of a party structure, lacking the infrastructure to have longevity, making it more difficult to get on the ballot. Now he picked
again, she's like, what did you want him to do, Bree? Like he pretty much, it was pretty obvious that he chose Shanahan as a running mate for the money factor, because to keep up with these major parties on any level, you have to have money, so he did everything he could. I think he was a very what's the word? Like adroit, I guess, politician in that respect, And Shanahan was actually pretty open about the fact that she was funding him. He was pretty transparent about all that too. So I don't get what Bree's argument is here against RFK, other than maybe she doesn't like him, and so she just wants to be shitty about it. But
billionaire as his VP, which made it a lot easier for him to get on the ballot than it was for someone like, let's say, Cornel West, who's been really struggling in that regard, because it does take a lot of money. This is fundamentally a money game. It's what's so unfortunate.
Cornel West struggle, though, too. Again, that's an unfair comparison, because Cornel West was clearly never serious. His struggle was with himself. He could have ran in the Green Party. He was invited to. He was going to, and then he hired Peter Dow and told, argued with Jimmy Dore instead of trying to unite, working class people. He's an idiot. I loved Cornel West too. Look at old videos of me pimping Cornel. Oh, Cornel West is the best choice. I did a song about it with clips of him on Stephen Colbert. I was a total mark for Cornel West. And then Jimmy Dore interviewed him, and Jimmy Dore, like it or not, has been 1000% accurate about all of his criticisms of the progressive movement and the Democratic Party in general. So, say what you want again, Bree, but this criticism of RFK just doesn't make any sense
about politics in this country. That being said, it wasn't enough. He obviously ultimately capitulated. He has a disastrous record on Israel, which I think probably cost him his really amazing first campaign manager, who was Dennis Kucinich, who has been very consistent.
She's right about that. But again, what do you expect the guy to do at this point? The Democrats are the ones who ejected him off the ballot, So I think the decision that he made here was the right one. And, say whatever you want about RFK. He's going to be a better choice than Kamala Harris. Trump is going to be a better choice for RFK. Why would RFK caucus with the Democrats after they did everything in their power to kick him off the ballot and dead a primary that he tried to run in? It just doesn't make any sense. And she's like, well, he didn't, her criticisms fall flat because he did everything she said he should do. He did try to build a movement outside the two-party system, and they sued him off the ballots and smeared him as having brain worms and all kinds of stuff, And so with the Israel thing, it's almost like it's the last issue you should discuss with any of these people, because they all agree on it. So there's no daylight on that particular issue for any of them. Like I said before, Harris and Biden just market themselves better as but they're in power now and they're not doing anything. So you can tell that they're full of shit. And so it's kind of like the Israel thing is almost like used as a divided, when it forces you to not look at the rest of the issues, which RFK and Trump are a lot better on than Israel. So, and again, I still think Trump is a little bit more of a wild card there than the other candidates, just because of who he is as a person, and no one considers that. So this last, this isn't the last bit I have, but this is the last, I think, Trump-related bit that I have. And I was going to start it by showing you how low the bar is for Kamala Harris. So let's start with that. This is your good friend Kyle Kalinske gushing about Kamala Harris's recent interview with CNN. Hold on, before we do that, credit to Postuopoulos here for the tweet. Kyle Kalinske fawns over Kamala's disaster of an interview. He says she doesn't sound inauthentic. The interview went from good to great. She's an upgrade from the past, and that she's kind of fucking killing it. So let's watch
She
this
has to
clip.
do, and this is definitely more like modern day Kamala Harris, who's more comfortable in her skin and confident, versus 2020 Kamala Harris running in the primary, where she was sort of flailing and all over the place, and she felt very inauthentic.
Well, first of all, we had to recover as an economy, and we have done that. I'm very proud of the work that we have done that has brought inflation down to less than 3%. The work that we have done to cap the cost of insulin at $35 a month for seniors. Donald Trump said he was going to do a number of things, including allowing Medicare to negotiate drug.
So let's just start with the claim that they've brought inflation down to 3%. Has anything gotten cheaper for you? Because it hasn't for me. So that's an arbitrary claim right off the bat. But let's keep going.
The prices never happened. We did it.
Oh, this interview so far just went from good to great. Kamala and Biden's move was, which is $35 insulin across the board in Medicare. Part B, Part D. You also have the 10 drug prices per year, where it was negotiated for lower prices with the pharmaceutical industry. Now, you could argue, hey, that didn't go far enough. We needed to reduce the price of all the drug. I 100% agree with that. But the fact of the matter is the Democratic plan is way more wide-ranging and far-reaching than Trump's plan, but he keeps trying to take credit. And she's setting the record straight here and going, we did way more than you did, and we went way further than you did.
You maintain Bidenomics is a success. I maintain that when we do the work of bringing down prescription medication for the American people, including capping the cost of the annual cost of prescription medication for seniors at $2,000, when we do what we did in the first year of being in office to extend the child tax credit so that we cut child poverty in America by over 50%, when we do what we have done to invest in the American people and bringing manufacturing back to the United States so that we created over 800,000 new manufacturing jobs, bringing business back to America, what we have done to improve the supply chain so we're not relying on foreign governments to supply American families with their basic needs, I'll say that that's good work.
God damn, who is this woman? And what did she do with the old school Kamala Harris? You want to talk about an upgrade?
Keith Olbermann saw this interview, and here's what he had to say in response.
Hey, heart porn star dick.
He also added,
Now, I'll confess that I have licked Joe Biden's dick all the way through since 1975.
So let's let Kyle keep going.
Bro, wow. I need you to bring up the infrastructure bill. I need you to bring up the Inflation Reduction Act, because these actually had tremendous effects. And here she is. She just brought up the 800,000 manufacturing job number. Got to be honest, bro. She's kind of fucking killing it. She's kind of killing it so far.
My goodness. What has happened to Kyle? He must have got bitten by the joy bug. And if you haven't heard or seen Kamala's new ad that I've been playing, let's get that going for you.
Joy, 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 joy.
There you go. So I think that one of the things that Trump has started doing, because if you listen to him talk lately, he's calling Chuck Schumer a Palestinian. He sounds like a complete tool. But he has been putting people out on the campaign trail to speak on his behalf that I think have been doing a pretty good job. He put out Tulsi Gabbard, RFK Jr., and one of the people that he put out that I think is probably one of his most effective surrogates is one of his most effective surrogates. One of the people, so let me start that over because I just interrupted myself. But one of the people that he put out that I think is one of his most effective surrogates is his lawyer, Alina Habba. First of all, she's beautiful. Second of all, she's obviously very intelligent and well-spoken. And so I just wanted to show you some of this. She's talking about Kamala Harris and women. And I think she has some pretty good takes here. And it's good that Trump has someone who isn't his daughter out there on the trail representing him in this fashion. So check this out real quick and let's talk about it. I'm just screwing it up. Here we go.
I asked my daughter this morning, what should mommy speak about today? And she answered me so quickly. She goes, Mom, speak about women. I can do that because unlike some people in America, I can define what a woman is.
So does that land? I think that does land with a certain type of people. And the people that it doesn't land with are already voting for the Democrats anyway.
Mom knows we have the toughest job in the world as mothers. We do. America, do not get distracted.
So listen to this too. There's a room full of right wingers cheering that too. That mothers are important and all that stuff. So
by Kamala's talking about her superficial attributes because it's her policies that are going to matter. Now, I could stand here and I could talk about them, but I don't use them because I don't need to. This is not a game. We've got to get President Trump back in that White House on November 5th, and we will do it. USA.
So I think that's relevant in that she's saying that Kamala's whole focus on personal attributes rather than policy is not a winning move. And in this next clip, she talks a little bit about what Kamala Harris is. And I think this is another attack that could land really well if it's utilized in the proper fashion. So check this out.
Patriots. Kamala Harris had a chance to be a role model for young girls and women across America to show us what real leadership looks like. Instead, she has shown me and the rest of America what a puppet has looked like for a failing administration.
Oh! See, that is a potent attack, I think. That is a soundbite she's a puppet. She kind of is a puppet. I mean, that's accurate. And but let's let her keep going. So I'm not going to make you watch all this, but she kind of hits Kamala in this last bit about needing to have a man at her interview because the only interview she did, she had to have Tim Walz sitting next to her. So this is also, I think, a pretty potent attack line.
He's done for us. Ladies and gentlemen, I don't know if you saw her on CNN, but let me be very clear. I am an American woman. I am a MAGA woman, and I don't need a man standing next to me to get up and speak. So while Ms. Harris is too busy trying not to giggle in front of the American people, I am going to get my hands dirty and help President Trump save this country. God bless you all.
So that's what Trump has going for him. And here again is what Harris has going for her.
Joy, 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 joy.
All right, moving on. One of my favorite people, and your favorite people, I'm sure, Jimmy Dore, did a show recently, and I would not have seen this had he not done this. But he highlighted these Israeli podcasters talking about how they view the Gaza thing. So I'm just going to share the clip from Jimmy Dore's stream because I didn't want to go dig it up on my own. So check this out and let's talk about it.
And that's us in Bizarro World.
So I want to play this since you both have been Jewish all your life.
He's half.
And I just wanted to play this for you. And I'm kind of shocked at this and shocked that this is how people in Israel think, because the Jews here I know don't think like this. But here we are.
What we're doing in Gaza. Because in Gaza, maybe there's mass destruction, but there's not massive death. Or deportation.
Yeah, there's no deportation because they're all dead.
No,
anyway,
not at all.
here we go.
Anyway, so when you sit on your high horse,
no, the people who are sitting on their high horse are the police trampling Hasidic Jews in Israel. That's
right.
weird. That's weird.
And I'm sure I don't mean to belittle our listeners. We love you guys, but if you're listening to our words and saying, how could they be advocating to massive bombing, indiscriminate bombing, how could they talk about killing children? We're not advocating to target children, but forgive us if we don't give a shit.
Forgive me if we don't forgive you for not giving a shit. How about that? The entire world is kind of woken up now simultaneously to the fact that you aren't the royalty that your mother told you were.
And I have to tell you, there are plenty of American Zionists who think this way. This is not unique to Israelis.
So let's a little bit more. Here we go.
Everybody there dies. It's just the way we feel. It's just the way Israelis feel.
Yeah.
Because, and this is what that's the whole.
I wanted to just take a quick sidebar there because he said it's just the way we feel, and I want to share the thoughts on that of a very prominent Jewish Zionist thinker, Ben Shapiro, and he famously said right here, "Facts don't care about your feelings." This is from February 8th of 2016. Facts don't care about your feelings, buddy. According to Ben Shapiro himself, the prominent. So going back to this, let's just rewind that just a little bit here.
But forgive us if we don't give a shit.
Forgive me if we don't forgive you for not giving a shit.
And I have to tell you, there are plenty of Americans this way. This is not unique to Israelis.
So let's a little bit more. Here we go.
Everybody there dies. It's just the way. And my wife was like, it'll be you or me tomorrow, or Daniela or Itai, God forbid.
Yep.
So one of the things I will say about
this
whole event, and that's all I'm really going to show. That go watch the whole stream, the whole clip. Jimmy always does great work, but that's how they feel, and there are facts to the contrary. That we don't care how you feel. Facts don't care about your feelings. But just to continue down this path with your boy Ben Shapiro, I dug up this clip of him recently talking about incitement. And it's interesting because if you've noticed, he's all for, calling protesters anti-Semites and getting them thrown out he's claiming they're inciting violence. So this is one of his most famous, clips, I guess, where he talks, he got in an argument with this girl about incitement. And I honestly agree with everything Ben says here. I just don't think that he agrees with it anymore. In fact, he clearly doesn't agree with it anymore. He's flip-flopped, to use the term. But check this out. This is actually really well said on Ben's part.
So I have a very strong standard with regard to incitement, and I'm very consistent about this. If I'm not telling somebody to commit violence, I'm not inciting them to violence. I've held the standard for Barack Obama when he.
If I'm not telling someone to commit violence, I am not inciting them to violence. that's pretty clear and respectable.
He was saying anti-police things, and then somebody went and shot up some police officers in Dallas. I said, that's not Barack Obama's fault. When a Bernie Sanders supporter went and shot up a congressional baseball game, I said, that's not Bernie Sanders' fault because Bernie Sanders wasn't calling for that. Political debate requires that you talk to people and people take your words as what they mean, not as an excuse to go and do violence. I've never called for violence, nor would I. As far as the idea that my words are some sort of attack, a violent attack, for example,
because he does
saying
not listen to
anti-police
this.
things, and then somebody went and shot up some police officers in Dallas, I said, that's not Barack Obama's fault. When a Bernie Sanders supporter went and shot up a congressional baseball game, I said, that's not Bernie Sanders' fault because Bernie Sanders wasn't calling for that. Political debate requires that you talk to people and people take your words as what they mean, not as an excuse to go and do violence. I've never called for violence, nor would I. As far as the idea...
Political talk requires that you take people's words for what they mean.
That you talk to people and people take your words as what they mean.
So from the river to the sea is definitely a call for violence, right, Ben? Let me let him finish his point before we jump into...
Not as an excuse to go and do violence. I've never called for violence, nor would I. As far as the idea that my words are some sort of attack, a violent attack, for example, on folks who are transgender, my view...
not saying they're
I know, but
violent
I'm responding to the people who are not you who might say that. Okay. So the idea that I am transphobic, for example, this is a bizarre kind of attack in the sense that I don't know that I've ever exhibited phobia of trans people. I'm not afraid of trans people.
In the same way, people that are protesting Israel have not exhibited anti-Semitic tendencies. Israel does not represent all Jewish people any more than, Joe Biden represents all Christian people, or the government of the United States represents all Christian people. So it's interesting to see Ben talk like this, because this is honestly, I think, this type of commentary is why he became so popular, because it's very honest and concise and to the point. But let's listen to how he sounds nowadays for a minute. So let me just share this with you real quick, and let's listen to modern day Ben Shapiro, who seems to have forgotten this. The title of this video is actually Jew-Hating Universities.
From both sides of the aisle. So, for example, Republicans yesterday put forward a resolution condemning anti-Zionism as anti-Semitism. This led Representative Jerry Nadler to suggest that anti-Zionism is not anti-Semitism. Now, the way that you get, the reason he's doing this is because there are people inside his own coalition who wish that Israel would just disappear, that it would be destroyed. That'd be like Ilhan Omar and Rashida Tlaib.
So again,
and he doesn't wish to condemn them.
These people are not saying they want Israel to be destroyed. None of them are saying that. These are his interpretations, which he just said in that previous clip is political speak, that if it's not a direct incitement to violence, it's not censorable. It's not actually an incitement to violence. It's how you interpret it.
So he's going to pretend that anti-Zionism and anti-Semitism are totally unrelated. The way that he gets out of this,
because they are,
particular box, since obviously Ilhan Omar and Rashida Tlaib are anti-Semites and hate Jews and Israel, the way he gets out of this box.
Okay, in the comments, if you have proof, if you have clips of them saying we hate Jews and we hate Israel, please show them to me, because I've never seen that ever in my life. I've seen them be critical of Israel's bombing campaigns, but I've never seen them. Let's go to the comments here. Willie's like, it's Ben Shapiro's fault that he can't get his wife wet. Yeah. I've played my wet ass P word clip. That was kind of one of my first ventures into content when I clipped him over the beat for that song. But see what else? Ben Shapiro supports attacking other countries, so he advocates violence. Yeah, I mean, listen to him. Let's keep listening to him here.
Box is he suggests, well, there are some Jews who are anti-Zionist. This is the favorite tactic, and the people he cites are Satmar Hasidim, which is I
would cite Simone Zimmerman and Jewish Voice for Peace,
sect of ultra-Orthodox, who, by the way,
maybe Jill Stein, also the Hasidics.
Wait, when it says they're anti-Zionist, let's be clear what they mean by anti-Zionist. What's Satmar Hasidim, this ultra-Orthodox sect, which is a tiny, tiny, tiny percentage of even the Orthodox? What exactly is their belief system? Their belief system is that there should, in fact, be a Jewish country in Israel, but it should be a Davidic monarchy with the reestablishment of the Third Temple.
So already,
not quite the anti-Zionism.
Already, Ben Shapiro is going against his beliefs here. Listen to what he said here.
Not as an excuse to go and do violence. I've never called for violence. Sanders wasn't calling for that. Alice, I said that's not
What you say you can.
I have a very strong standard with regard to incitement, and I'm very consistent about this. If I'm not
No,
telling
you're
somebody
not.
to commit violence, I'm not inciting them to violence. I've held the standard for
If I'm not telling someone to commit violence, I'm not inciting them to violence. But anti-Zionism is incitement to violence. That's what he's saying. I just want to hear that one more time.
strong standard with regard to incitement, and I'm very consistent about this. If I'm not telling somebody to commit violence, I'm not inciting them to violence. I've held the standard for Barack Obama.
If I'm not telling someone to commit violence, I'm not inciting them to violence. Let's see what new Ben Shapiro says.
The Palestinians.
This is like Ben Shapiro's alternate ego because now he has a little bit of a beard and a leather jacket. It's like, when they had Spock, like alternate Spock with the goatee. This is like alternate universe Ben
You see every Jew obliterated from the region. The Satmar Hasidim don't believe in a secular state of Israel. They believe in a Jewish theocracy. So if you're talking about these people as though what they actually want is for all Jews to be removed from the region, no. Actually, what they want is for there to be a Jewish monarchic theocracy in the land, complete with high priesthood and a third temple built right now, instead of what they think of as an obstacle to that, the secular Jewish state of Israel. That's what you're talking about. So you're playing a word game. When you say the Satmar Hasidim want the same thing as for...
So what he's saying is the Hasidic Jews that are against Israel, they want a more of a religious theocracy. That who cares? They're still, that doesn't mean that they're inciting violence when they say that, when they say that they're anti-Zionist. That doesn't mean that they're anti-Jewish.
For example,
they are Jewish.
Omar, that they're the same kind of quote unquote anti-Zionist. That's ridiculous. That's ridiculous. That's like saying that somebody who wants a Christian theocracy in the United States is in the same camp as someone who wants to tear down the government of the United States and replace it with a communist dictatorship. Not quite the same thing. And
it is the same thing. Their political beliefs are different, but they want complete control of the government in the way that they see things. It is the same thing.
In any case, here's Jerry Nadler. And what he's really doing here, obviously, is he's covering for Rashida Tlaib and Ilhan Omar and other members of the Democratic Party who don't actually like Israel and don't like Jews.
Unfortunately, this resolution does absolutely nothing to genuinely counter the scourge of anti-Semitism, nor does it help bring us together with the unity of purpose that this topic merits.
So this guy is like also kind of on his side, like pretending that there's a scourge of anti-Semitism. There might be now because of all the stuff Israel has been doing. They've definitely helped ramp it up, but it's not this sentiment is not against the Jewish people. The Jewish people are part of this sentiment.
Rather, it is another attempt in a long series of veiled efforts by the GOP to weaponize Jewish lives for political gains. It is another partisan gotcha game that amounts to cheap value signaling, not serious action. But if there ever was a time for real action, it is now. Today, in the face of the largest increase in anti-Semitism, both violent and virulent, in this nation's history, we have a clear...
What is the source of that claim? That's what I want to know. What is it? Is it the ADL? Yes. Yeah, yes, it is. Yes, it is. Okay, I got to show you this. Data on rise in anti-Semitism from Google. What's the first link that comes up? ADL, U.S. anti-Semitism incidents skyrocketed 360% in aftermath of October 7th. So the ADL is the source of that claim. And we all know how Kanye feels.
ADL is played out. Nobody knows who the ADL are. Stop giving them attention. Nobody cares about the ADL.
So right off the bat, you've got this complete farce about a rise in anti-Semitism, which is just completely untrue and manufactured. And both Ben Shapiro and Nadler buy into that. But Nadler is an anti-Semite, apparently, because he's not as he's not sufficiently militant about Israel. So I just wanted to show you what a gigantic hypocrite Ben Shapiro is, and how ridiculous the claims that he's making are. And you know, I don't know how he looks at himself in the mirror when he does that. You know, he literally said, unless it's a direct threat, it's not political violence. But then he'll turn around and say anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism, which is basically claiming that someone who doesn't share his political belief on Israel is a racist. The thing that he spent his entire life, or his entire, you know, career as a pundit railing against. That's literally his core issue. So how do you take these people seriously? It's fucking ridiculous. Anyway, we got one more little thing I want to talk about before we move on. And as you know, a lot of voices were recently. Hold on a second. I keep stepping on myself. A bunch of our friends in the political space, fellow Beanie, Tim Pool, and others were recently accused of working with the Russian government, which is complete masturbation. It is literally a gigantic press circle jerk. And I don't understand how anyone can buy it. So I didn't really go too much into the weeds on this. I think most shows have already covered it really well, and what a joke it is. I saw Napolitano do a piece on it, Dore did a piece on it, Do Dissidents, everybody. But I did see this piece, and I want to tie this together with some other stuff he said, of Vivek Ramaswamy talking to Tucker Carlson. And really what I pulled this clip for, the second part is for what he says about the way that Trump should be running. And I hope that the MAGA people are picking up on this. But let's start with what he has to say about the whole Tim Pool indictment thing, because I think he makes some really solid points on that issue.
Of course, I'm in the thick of it now. But let me take those last two presidential elections. So this myth of, does it exist, some sort of foreign election attempts at interference? Of course it does. It happens worldwide. It happens here in the United States. But this idea of Russian election interference in particular, let's
He doesn't bring up AIPAC there, of course.
trace the history of that in each of the last two elections.
This is
Let's
very
go to
good.
2016. The allegation of Russian election interference to support Donald Trump, when you double click on that and look at what was the actual foreign election interference there, it was actually U.S. election interference in the U.S. election through the Steele dossier, but laundered through the narrative of actual Russian interference. And actually, there was a Russian intermediary to perpetuate that attempt at election interference about Trump's Russia collusion hoax. That's in 2016. Now we get to 2020. Again, domestic election interference is the systematic.
I've covered this before, but if you're new to this world, the indictments that were handed out during the Russiagate thing, almost none of them were related to 2016's, and the ones that were instances like with Michael Flynn, where the FBI got a FISA warrant, tapped his phone, and then interviewed him about conversations they had recorded, and when his confessions or his testimony didn't match identically with the recordings they had, they indicted him for lying to the FBI. Go read these indictments if you think I'm joking, but that's exactly what they did. Anyway.
Suppression of the Hunter Biden laptop story. That didn't happen by Russian companies, it didn't happen by the Russian government. It happened by U.S. social media companies acting at the direction of deep state actors in the U.S. government that suppressed probably a story whose suppression changed the outcome of the 2020 presidential election. But again, what did they say? They said, no, this was Russian disinformation. So now you're seeing a pattern. In 2016, there's domestic attempts at election interference, but they run it through a Russian smokescreen. In 2020, there's domestic election interference, but they run it through a Russian smokescreen. So this time around, when I see Merrick Garland in the Department of Justice sitting under the Biden administration, suddenly alleging election interference by the Russians, I don't have any facts other than to say my radar goes off and says, I want to know where that election interference is actually beginning. a lot of those allegations that they were somehow helping Trump, I actually got curious. Actually, you could make strong arguments that a lot of these posts or whatever actually weren't helping Trump at all. But the fact that they called that Russian election interference again just suggests to me that this may be part of a pattern of what we saw in 2016 and 2020.
Well, you think?
So I don't really buy what they're selling on this.
So I think that's a great point that Vivek brings up there. He uses precedent to explain the current round of, bullshit that the Justice Department's putting out. Now, when you look at these accusations too, they say the investigation is ongoing. Yeah, because the investigation is complete farce. This is being done so they can hang that mantle around these people. So they can say, oh, Tim Pool, you shouldn't listen to any of the debates he has on his channel because he's associated with Russia. And if you've ever listened to Tim Pool, he's like ridiculously anti-communist, like to a stupid point. To the point where if you know who Tim Pool actually is, there's no way you would believe that he has any intentional ties with the Russian government. That is one of the dumbest premises I've ever heard in my life. But also, people who don't know Tim Pool, which is a lot of people, brunch liberals and brunch Republicans, brats, will see that in the mainstream news and go, oh, yeah, that guy's associated with Russia, And that's what this is for. So I think Vivek does a great job kind of breaking that down and just kind of explaining, yeah, this is complete bullshit. So there's one more clip I want to share with you real quick of this conversation that I think is even more important and kind of the reason I am even touching on this conversation to begin with.
So I think if we have another debate smackdown on Tuesday.
So what he says here is important because I hope, again, that the MAGA people and the Trump campaign catch wind of this because it's so important. It's so important. This is how Trump wins. And to my friends on the left, if you've listened to me talk, I have clearly enunciated my political views, my views on this election cycle, and I'll do it again right now. And that's that I think Trump should win. I think I want Trump to win. I'm probably not going to vote, but if I was going to vote, I might even vote for him because he is slightly the lesser of two evils. And also because I think it's a net positive for just left issues in general, because once Trump is president again, the left will suddenly become anti-war again. They'll suddenly become against the government, which we want. I want the brunch libs, yelling, hey, give us healthcare again. I want the brunch libs yelling, hey, let's stop wars again. Now Trump's in control, so war's bad. That's going to happen. And that aside, there's a bunch of other reasons I think that so let me share this quick little anecdote before I go into this too. The other day, I do ride share driving. If you talk to me at all, you probably know that. But I drove a kid the other day, a black man. He was young, 22, I think, former military, served in the army, did tours in like Senegal and Africa. From Chicago, he told me flat out, he's like, I think Trump is the best choice at this point. And that's a black man from Chicago who served in the military. And he said that they felt a difference in their unit between the Biden-Harris and the Trump administration. And I told him, also objectively for me, I don't like the direction the country is going right now. So just break it down on that alone. I want to change, So even if I disagreed with Trump on almost everything, I would want someone different at the helm because I don't like the fact that who the fuck is running the country right now? Who's making these decisions? Who's getting that phone call in the middle of the night that Hillary Clinton used to whine about, talk about in the campaigns? Biden's not getting it. And Harris ain't getting it. So who is running the country? And anyway, we've gone down this road before, but listen to what Vivek says here. And if you're MAGA leaning or you're someone who wants the Trump to win this cycle over the Democrats, spread the word on this because I think what Vivek says here is absolutely
Tuesday. If I was a betting man, I'd predict that's what we're about to have. I also would predict we're going to have some very strange things that happen on the back of that as well. And I think that in some ways, the Republican Party has just been so behind on this. I'll probably make some people mad by, lifting the curtain on this, but
listen,
last year to make the Republican Party debate stage, the final condition is we had to sign all the candidates. Ronna McDaniel's requirement. I had some words to say that it had a certain, outcome there, but she made us sign a beat Biden pledge. And so this is in July or August of last year. And I said, this is dumb. This is silly because we're not going to be running against Joe Biden. So we're going to spend an entire year of financial, political, and messaging capital running against a candidate who is not the actual candidate we're going to run against. But it was the beat Biden pledge. That was just the dogmatic messaging of the Republican Party. And what do you know, a year and a half later.
And that's, again, how you know the two parties are combined, because they do this. We got to beat Trump. That's all the Democrats have. We must beat Trump. Everyone beat Trump.
We've wasted a lot of money, a lot of time, a lot of credibility with the public. We even boosted the media's credibility because they got that last month where they got to criticize Joe Biden. So now when they're not actually going after Kamala, they still look even-handed to the American public because they went after a Democrat most recently. In some ways, it was the worst of all worlds. And so I think we need to get better as a movement, I think as a Republican Party, on staying skeptical.
No, this is the key, too.
On skating to where the puck is going. And I think ultimately the way we're going to win this is actually not even by focusing on Kamala. That's sort of where I've landed on this is, people say she's a communist or she's, a socialist or whatever. I think that is giving her a little too much credit because it assumes.
And also, no one ever brings this up. No one ever brings this up, but I'm going to bring it up again because everyone needs to remember this. It gets lost in the memory hole, but Trump donated to Kamala Harris twice. Trump donated to Kamala Harris's campaign. Campaign finance records show Donald Trump donated twice to re-elect Kamala Harris as Attorney General of California more than a decade ago. So the idea that she's some also Dick Cheney just endorsed her. So he's right about this. Do not act like Kamala Harris is a communist, guys. She is not a communist. In the Democratic primary, they called her Cop Mala. Okay? Get it through your skulls. That is not a winning tactic. But listen to what he says. It gets better.
She has an ideology.
I agree.
She doesn't have an ideology.
Right.
She just doesn't. Most people in California here know her. She's just another cog. Right? She's another cog in a machine. We're not running against a candidate. We are running against a system. And the way we're going to win this is forget who they put up. Kamala, if they make her the president before the election, who knows, whatever it is, it doesn't matter. If we actually win this by offering our own vision of who we are.
What he just said there, I kind of glossed over the first time, but if they make her the president before the election, they could do that using the I think it's the 25th Amendment. And people have talked about that. They'll, in October, they could be like, oh, Kamala just ordered missiles sent to Israel or some bullshit like that. And the point that he's making is you shouldn't be running against the personality. You should be running against the system. And she represents the system. Absolutely and completely. And if you think I'm kidding, watch her new campaign ad that I just made this morning.
Oh, joy of joy. Oh, joy.
Back to this.
And what we actually stand for, right? Individual, family, nation, and God beat race, gender, sexuality, and climate. If we have the courage to stand for it, but that's how we protect ourselves against what I think is going to be a complicated couple of months ahead, is what I predict.
So smart. Well, how's this for crazy?
Right.
How's
this for crazy? So you get the idea. I think that Vivek is nailing it, and I'm glad that he's close to Trump, and I hope that message gets out among the MAGA base. Like, the idea that Kamala Harris is a communist is complete stupidity. And if you run with that, you're going to get what you deserve. You look as dumb as she does. She's not a communist. She's a cop. Trump donated to her twice. Would he donate to a communist? I mean, would Dick Cheney and the entire Democratic establishment and Mitt Romney endorse a communist? No. That's a stupid line, and it's a stupid way to try to paint things, and you're going to lose if you dip yourself to that dumbass level. But running against the system is what will win, because that's what people want. That's why people voted for Bernie Sanders, and then the Democratic Party crushed him. That's why people like RFK, because he's a guy who fought the system. And the people that hate him, I know, he's a lawyer, he's got a scratchy voice, whatever. The guy look at his history. That's the thing no one ever does, is look at the things that he has done before he was in the political realm. He fought corporations in court to keep them from polluting the water and the air. I mean, that says a lot about someone's character, and people forego that. And the fact that he is, he's running with Trump now, to me, says a lot. As Jimmy said the other day, as was pointing out, RFK has people cheering for, going up against the food companies and cleaning up our air and our water and having healthier families. That's good, and I don't know how you could see that and take this as a valuable, a valid political campaign slogan.
Joy.
So anyway, that's all I got for you today. Let me go back to the comments one more time. Bola says she's a communist. I thought that said a corporatist without my glasses on at first glance, but yeah, she's Kamala, the communist. Russiagate 2.0, the podcasters are maybe guilty of poor judgment and whoring out for money. Yeah, but even that, man, when you are in that world, you're not vetting these people. You're just like, hey, it's a company that was based in Tennessee. They're not going, well, let me just check to make sure you're not secretly Russian. You know what I mean? It's so clearly some kind of a defamatory move to make them look like this. We see it all day. Anyone that supports, ending the Ukraine war, or, says anything against the current establishment is a Russian, secret Russian spy. So an indictment like this, much like they did with the Trump shit, makes it look like it's legitimate. When Merrick Garland comes out on TV, the attorney, or the AG, when he comes out on TV and says, hey, these guys were taking money from Russia, most dipshits see that and go, oh no, Russia's trying to do it again. Most people think that like Keith Olbermann here, like this guy.
Retired Army Colonel Douglas McGregor said on Fox last night, quote, their casualties are horrific. We have effectively seen the Russians destroy 3 separate armies built by the Ukrainians, and everybody is beginning to wonder what's really happening.
Remember that article I just showed you earlier? Before Brat Summer? Keith Olbermann is calling people Russian propagandists for reporting reality.
I hope McGregor was paid for this. I hope McGregor was paid for this by Putin. I hope he was paid a lot. I hope he can find somewhere to spend it all in hell. Now, I'll confess that I have licked Joe Biden's dick all the way through since 1975.
Anyway, I got to get out of here. We're coming up on 2 hours. Thanks for tuning in, you guys. Catch me on Twitter. Catch me on subscribe and like, all that shit. I never say that enough. And remember, it's Brat Summer, guys. And brunch Republicans are against Trump. So until next time, I will see you all on the internet, and be safe out there in the inflated ass world we live in.